All right, story time. This was a few years ago now, but a fellow called me up and he said, "Hey, I make around 250,000, 350,000 a year. It varies professionally gambling." And I was like, "Hey, cool. That's really sick, bro. What do you want?" He wanted some tax advice to say that his winnings were windfall gains and not taxable. I remember at the time I massively underquoted this job because I didn't think he was going to accept it anyway. So I sent him a quote and he accepted it. And that was kind of the very first indication that it was probably true, because if you were just making up shit, you're not going to pay for tax advice on nonsense. Anyway, we go through the rulings, we go through the case law, went back pretty far, went back to like the early 1900s in cases. ATO had basically won almost none of those cases. The very few cases they did win is when people were like horse trainers or ex-bookies, and then they started betting and making lots of money, and that's just awful suspicious, so the ATO get the shits. But they did win those cases in the court, so that connection to the industry was always critical. This guy just worked off tips to tips and he did his own stuff and a bit of match betting. It wasn't really professional, but it was more than just a hobby. However, the ATO had just lost so many cases that the case law was overwhelming, that it was almost impossible to be a business unless there was that connection to industry, and there just wasn't. Bro was pretty happy when I gave him the tax advice that his winnings were not taxable at all. It did mean it was almost impossible for him to get a bank loan to buy a house because his income was always zero. But, you know, you win some, you lose some. Off the back of that job, they all seem to know each other, these professional gamblers. I've got about 3 or 4 of them so far, and I get one every now and then basically doing the same advice. It's looking at the activities, how they bet, their connection to the industry, their sophistication, and making that decision. I don't know, gambling is a fun industry, especially people gambling and winning. They're really fun clients to have.